Hello and welcome to the Lifestyle Evolution Podcast. My name is Joshua Laycock, and I'm going to be your host on this new podcast trying to explore, well, quite frankly, how can we all get just a little bit better? Had some people ask me, what the hell does Lifestyle Evolution? Why did you name your coaching practice and your platform that? Well, in psychology, lifestyle refers to pretty much everything, the way that we live our lives, right? It's our behaviors, our beliefs, the activities, the choices that we make, kind of the people that we are and how we show up. And just as importantly, how do all those decisions influence the way that we show up in our world, the way that we engage in relationships with other people, how happy, how contented we are, how much drive do we have? Are we striving to meet our goals? And yeah, there's a million podcasts out there that do this. Um, but I've done these before and I had a pretty good response, and I miss being able to share my thoughts and views, and in many ways I'm on this journey with you. I've been doing men's work for a long time, about 10 years, both as someone who's been the recipient of what it means to do men's work and to pull myself out of some pretty dark times. And then slowly transitioned into leadership. And I've been privileged to work for a few different organizations. I still do work with some, and I can see the transformative power of what this kind of work can do for men. And that leads to the second part, like evolution. I don't know about you. I've gone through phases in my life where I'm hyper fit and I'm super lean and I'm really strong, and then maybe I get overwhelmed by it, or I've gone too hard and I let it slip, or an injury derails me, and all of a sudden my weight's ballooning and I'm not feeling comfortable and my health is suffering. Or I have moments where I'm really calm and I think, you know what, I'm a good father, I'm a good husband, this is pretty good. And then I have other times where I just feel completely unsettled, knocked off my game by a strong crosswind that I look back and go, man, that really shouldn't have impacted me that much. So, this notion of evolution, to me, it represents an element of permanence, right? It represents what can we do to maximize the changes in our world so that they're permanent, so that I now become a different person, a different, better human being. It's leveling up, right? But we can still get knocked down a level. But I'm going to latch onto this notion of evolution, that something fundamental within us is going to change because of our circumstances, because of the needs that we've identified, because quite frankly, we've recognized that if we don't evolve here, then I'm not really comfortable with what's waiting for me down the path. And I could tell you the overwhelming majority of the men that I've taken on as a coach, they almost all present with something very similar, which is I thought everything was kind of okay. I wasn't really sure. It wasn't amazing. But then something just broadsided me. Usually it's a relationship. Sometimes it's a health scare. I didn't see it coming and it floored me. And now what the hell do I do? And unfortunately, look, this podcast is probably going to help a little bit of everybody. That's the plan, but it's principally out there for men because that's what I do and that's what I know. We tend to be really crappy at recognizing the signals, at seeing the lessons before we have to really have a felt sense of what that lesson means. I don't know where it came from. I think someone mentioned it to me, so I don't want to take credit for it, but I've said to my clients often, before every scream, there's an inhale, right? Before every yell, there's a whisper. And what we need to do is we need to start to recognize the whispers and the inhales, the time before life screams at you, before the people that matter most leave because they've had enough, before your body finally says, enough is enough, I can't handle this, before your mental health finally shuts you down because you've neglected it for so long. I don't know why we suck so much at this. at getting ahead of things. But we do. So over this next little while, I'm going to have some solo podcasts. I've got some ideas to bring some friends on. But really, what our goal is going to be is to recognize some of these whispers, some of these inhales that life is giving us, these little breadcrumbs to say, hey, you need to get your shit together. Because one way or the other, you're going to learn this lesson. And I've learned some of them the hard way, and thank goodness I have heard the whisper. But I'll tell you, almost every whisper that I've heard is because someone has said to me, hey, brother, pay attention to that whisper. Pay attention to the inhale. So that's the objective here with what we're going to be talking about. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to talk about the work that I've done, some of the lessons that I've learned. I always try to take what I see in the world and boil it down to as fundamental of an idea and a concept that I can get. But the truth is, the world is messier than that. Rarely does one thing apply to everybody. But what I find, though, is those exceptions that everyone likes to bring up, the yeah buts, they're actually the exception that proves the rule, not disproves it. The truth is, there's a lot of common threads. However, one of the things that I have noticed, and I could be completely off base with this, but I don't think so, is I find that one of the places that we go really wrong in the world is that we try to overcomplicate simple things, yet inversely, we oversimplify the really complicated things. There are socio-political issues plaguing our world that you go on Instagram or on YouTube, and there's always someone who's got the solution. Right? Let's oversimplify something that is really complicated. But we also like to do the inverse. And look, I could tell you when I was younger, especially, and I was trying to get in shape, I've always been a bit of a doughy dude. I was reading every fitness magazine. I was buying the gadgets. I was living on the supplements. I was trying to over program my workouts. I was trying to just hack it. I was trying to find a hack. And it didn't work because I was overcomplicating something that is, let's be honest, for the overwhelming majority of us average dudes out there, pretty straightforward. Eat cleaner, eat less, lift some weights, get moving. And this is not going to be a bro kind of podcast where I'm going to be like, bro, lift more weights. But sometimes the answer is lift more weights. But what I'm talking about is whether you like to run or bike or cycle or whatever the hell you like to do. I think we all know, right? So fitness seems to be one of these things that we wicked overcomplicate. Yes, elite athletes need fine level tuning. It's the same with some of these like biohack life experts. Yes, I'm sure if you want to get into the margin and start fine tuning an otherwise highly tuned world, then yeah, you need a bit of complexity. But for most of the guys listening here, we're trying to have like a little less here and a little more up here in the biceps. We know what we need to do. So we're going to try to simplify some of the really complicated stuff or stuff that we like to overcomplicate. And then depending on the time and the format, we might try to dive into some of the more complicated issues that the world seems to have this nasty habit of wanting to oversimplify. So we're going to talk about how to be better, right? Lifestyle evolution is not about how to buy a yacht. It's not about how to get a Lambo. I mean, if those are your things, cool, go for it. But that's not what we're talking about here. I don't know how to get rich quick. I don't know how to get a ripped summer body. I'm recording this in February. That's not me. That's not my thing. But what I can tell you is I have a good relationship. Been married a long time. I've got kids. I'm a pretty good dad. I'm a pretty good husband. I've done a lot of work on it. I've got a lot of work to continue to do. But my life is pretty good right now. I'm pretty at peace in most things. And I've had the honor of working with a lot of men to help them achieve some of their dreams and some of their goals. I'm also now working towards becoming a fully licensed registered psychotherapist because, you know, men need a little bit more help than a coach can provide. So at the time of recording, I have what's called a qualifying license. So I'm a registered psychotherapist, but I work under the very close supervision of my supervisor. This is not going to be a therapy podcast. I'm not going to provide therapeutic advice, but I will talk about some of the stuff that's plaguing all of my clients, confidentially, of course. I'm not speaking about any one client in particular, but I'm telling you this because this is what I've done. I've dedicated my life to this. Roughly 10 years ago, surprise, the birth of my first kid, I woke up one morning and I was living this incredible life. I'd hit the financial milestones that I wanted. I had a dog. I was married. I was living in one of the most beautiful places on earth, North Vancouver in BC. And I mean, when I say literally, I'm going to use that word deliberately. I was literally living across the street from this park that was savage and wild. There were bears and bald eagles and elk and moose and everything. It was wild. It was beautiful at night. I could hear the waterfall. I even had the truck that I wanted, this old Toyota truck that I had always coveted. I finally found one for sale at a reasonable price. I was living the life, and I was so miserable. I just knew that whatever I was doing wasn't scratching the itch. I wasn't alive. And I look back now and I go, man, you weren't a bad person. But God, you were a pretty shitty husband. And you had the makings of being a pretty shitty parent. You were driven by what I now, for me, recognize was all the wrong things. I was distracted. I was not, in my heart, being a very good human being. And I realized that I was walking the wrong path and I was lonely. I didn't have men in my life. I didn't have a sense of community. I fell into the lone wolf trap of I can do this all on my own. I saw other men as competition. And what a horrible place to be in. So, like for me, I don't know about you, I found a book. The book led me to a podcast. The podcast led me to an online men's group. And I did some really hard work there. And over the next 10 years, I evolved into leadership positions within a few men's groups, started to coach. My coaching practice started when someone reached out and said, hey, I need some of your time. You're a coach, right? I'll pay you. Of course, yes, I'm a coach. Sure, let's do that. That was how my world started, a very reluctant coach. But I fast forward 10 years now and I think back on the work that I've been able to do with these men and the work that they've helped me do on myself. You know, it, there's been some really hard times. There's been some truths about myself that I hadn't really wanted to face, some things that I had buried deep down inside. But I needed the security of men that I trusted, that knew what they were doing, that were there to hold me through this process and guide me. And the man that I am today, you wouldn't even have recognized me 10 years ago. Not just because I didn't have a beard, but I just mean like physically, emotionally, spiritually. And my wife and I were talking the other night about the absence of what we kind of called fuck you energy. This like confidence. Not that you are all things, not even close, but that whatever life throws at you, you know you can figure it out. Having margin in your world to know that there's slack, that if something knocks me down, I've got the slack in my life, whether it's financially, physically, socially, whatever. I've got the resources that I need to stand back up on my own 2 feet and to be alive enough in life to say, like, fuck yeah, to some of these challenges. Like, look, I'm not a crazy outdoor adventurer. I still have those dreams of living some wildlife. I am, by all accounts, a pretty average dude trying to live an above average life. And I'm starting at home, and I'm starting with my relationships, my wife, with my kids, with my friends, with my community. But I have learned some things along the way. And I've realized that, I'm pretty good at sharing some of those stories and helping people also walk that path. So, this is the podcast that I've decided to put together to share what I've learned, to answer your questions, to bring on people that I think will add to our narrative, bring some people on that I don't even necessarily agree with, that maybe we can challenge each other on the views of things. And hopefully, I'd like to bring in some people that over time have had a pretty significant influence on who I am and the kind of life that I'm leading. Both because I want to give them exposure, but also maybe in my own way to thank them for starting something earlier than I did. Yes, we're going to have available one-on-one slots for coaching. Yes, I'm going to be launching a group coaching / online men's platform for people who want to go a little deeper. It's going to be very structured, a little different than what's out there. Not an either or kind of thing. I think there's a lot of space for all of these great men who have online platforms and in-person platforms to connect. But I've always wanted to build something for myself the way I would like to build it. So I'm going to be doing that too. So keep an eye out for that. But really, this is just going to be a place to talk about all the things that I enjoy doing. Parenting, figuring stuff out, jujitsu. It's going to be a lot of jujitsu. Sorry about that. And I hope that you enjoy the journey. I hope that you take something away from these podcasts and don't get too sick of hearing me talk. And I would love to hear feedback, more of something, less of something. So this is just a short intro, a little bit about why I'm doing what I'm doing, a little bit about who I am and what I'm working on. And I really, really look forward to having this podcast grow, be just a part of my daily outlet on how I can share the things that I'm learning and bring something to you. So thank you so much for tuning into the first episode of the Lifestyle Evolution podcast. Plenty more to come, I promise. Until then, be well.